Hello everybody. If you want to read all the stories in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you. Short story 619, The Basement, Intermediate. In the quiet town of Eldridge, there lived a man named Thomas. He was a lonely carpenter who spent his days fixing old houses. One rainy evening, Thomas bought a big, old house on the edge of town. It was cheap because people said it was haunted, but Thomas did not believe in ghosts. He moved in with his tools and started to repair the place. The house was dark and creaky. The walls had strange stains, like old blood. Thomas laughed it off and began work in the basement. The basement was the worst part. It smelled of damp earth and something rotten. There was a heavy wooden door at the bottom of the stairs, locked with a rusty chain. Thomas broke the chain with his hammer and pushed the door open. Inside, the room was empty except for a large mirror on the far wall. The mirror was cracked, and its frame was carved with twisted faces that looked like they were screaming. Thomas felt a chill, but he ignored it. He decided to clean the room the next day. That night, Thomas could not sleep. He heard scratching sounds from below, like nails on wood. He went down to the basement with a torch. The mirror was fogged up, as if someone had breathed on it. Thomas wiped it clean and saw his reflection. But something was wrong. His eyes in the mirror were black, like empty holes. Suddenly, the scratching started again. It came from behind the mirror. Thomas touched the glass, and it felt warm, like skin. He pulled at the frame, and the mirror swung open like a door. Behind it was a hidden chamber, small and dark. The walls were covered in scratches, deep and bloody. On the floor lay bones, human bones, picked clean. Thomas's heart pounded. He turned to run, but the mirror door slammed shut. The room grew cold. From the shadows, a figure emerged. It was a woman, or what was left of her. Her skin hung in shreds, like torn cloth. Her face was a mask of gore, with eyes gouged out and teeth broken. She whispered, "You found me." The thing lunged at Thomas. Her fingers, sharp as claws, tore into his arm. Blood sprayed across the walls. Thomas screamed and swung his torch, hitting her side. Rotten flesh fell away, revealing maggots crawling in her ribs. She laughed, a wet, gurgling sound. Thomas fought back. He grabbed a bone from the floor and stabbed at her. It pierced her chest, but she did not stop. She clawed at his face, ripping his cheek open. Pain exploded in his head. Blood poured into his eyes. He stumbled, falling against the mirror. In his terror, Thomas smashed the glass with his fist. Shards flew everywhere, cutting his hands to ribbons. The woman howled and backed away. But as the mirror broke, something worse happened. From the shattered pieces, more figures crawled out, twisted bodies, limbs bent wrong, flesh decaying. They surrounded Thomas, tearing at him. One bit into his leg, crunching bone. Another ripped his ear off with its teeth. Thomas's screams echoed as they pulled him apart, piece by bloody piece. His guts spilled onto the floor, steaming in the cold air. He felt his life slipping away in agony. The next morning, the neighbors heard nothing. The house stood silent. When the police came weeks later, they found the basement door open. The mirror was whole again, without a crack. But on the floor, fresh bloodstains led to nowhere. Thomas was gone, just like the others before him. The house waited for its next owner. Vocabulary notes. Gruesome, adjective. Definition, something that is shocking, horrifying, or causes strong feelings of disgust because it is very unpleasant or violent. Example from the story, implied in the context of the story's tone and events, E.G., her skin hung in shreds, like torn cloth. The description of the woman's decayed and torn body creates a gruesome image. Example sentence, the gruesome sight of the bones and blood in the basement made Thomas feel sick. Similar words, horrific, ghastly, dreadful, revolting, appalling. Example, the horrific smell of the rotten flesh filled the room. Rotten, adjective. Definition: something that is decayed, spoiled, or has gone bad, often with a bad smell or appearance. Example from the story: it smelled of damp earth and something rotten. Example sentence: the rotten smell in the basement made it hard for Thomas to breathe. Similar words: decayed, spoiled, putrid, decomposing, rancid. Example: the decayed food in the old fridge gave off a terrible smell. Gouged, verb, past tense of gouge. Definition: to cut or scoop out something roughly, often causing damage or injury. Example from the story: her face was a mask of gore, with eyes gouged out and teeth broken. Example sentence: the creature's eyes were gouged out, leaving dark, empty holes. Similar words: carved, hollowed, dug, scraped, torn. Example: the attacker carved deep wounds into the victim's arm. Shreds, noun, plural. Definition: small, thin pieces that have been torn or cut from something larger. Example from the story: her skin hung in shreds, like torn cloth. Example sentence: the monster's skin was in shreds, revealing the bones underneath. Similar words: fragments, scraps, tatters, pieces, rags. Example: the old curtain was torn into tatters by the wind. Agony, noun. Definition: extreme physical or mental pain or suffering. Example from the story: he felt his life slipping away in agony. Example sentence: Thomas screamed in agony as the creatures tore at his body. Similar words: torment, anguish, suffering, pain, distress. Example: the anguish of losing his family was too much for him to bear. Story written by Grok AI. Image created by Grok AI. To read all the stories in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you. CC Music, Drifting at 432 Hz, Unicorn Heads.
You know that feeling when you read a story that just makes your skin crawl? One that really sticks with you long after you've put it down? Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain and see exactly how that magic trick is done. We're deconstructing a terrifying short story called The Basement to figure out what makes the horror really work.
I mean, it's the oldest question in the book, isn't it? That's what fuels pretty much every ghost story ever told. This particular story, though, it takes that simple question and turns it into a masterclass in suspense and sheer terror. And it does it using some very specific, very deliberate tools. So, let's dive in and see how.
Okay, so every great horror story, it's got to start with a great setting. Our story kicks off with a guy named Thomas, a lonely carpenter who gets a deal on a cheap old house. And right from the get-go, the author starts weaving this atmosphere of dread. Sure, the locals tell him it's haunted, but the real warnings, they're baked right into the description of the house itself.
Just look at this line. It's so simple, but wow, is it effective? The author could have just said the walls were stained, right? Easy. But adding like old blood, that plants this very specific, really unsettling seed in your mind. It's this tiny little detail that your brain just can't shake. And believe me, that's a classic move.
And that technique, it actually has a name. It's called foreshadowing. This isn't just a random detail thrown in there for flavor. Nope, it's a deliberate hint about the violence that's on its way. It's basically the author leaning in and whispering to you, the reader, hey, pay attention, something is seriously wrong here. And that just immediately dials up the unease.
But the author doesn't just stop at what you can see. They start layering the atmosphere by bringing in another sense, smell. That smell of decay, of something rotten, that's primal. It speaks to a part of our brain that's all about survival. It tells you on a gut level that this place isn't just old, it's sick. The danger suddenly feels way more real because you can practically smell it through the page. All right, so the atmosphere is set. It's creepy, it's unsettling. Now, the threat becomes active. We have Thomas in the house, and he's being drawn back to that awful basement by scratching sounds in the middle of the night. You see what's happening? The author is shifting gears here, moving from just building a creepy vibe to revealing the actual active threat that's living inside it. And this one single detail, it is a perfect, chilling way to escalate things. I mean, think about it. A fogged up mirror could just be condensation. No big deal. But that phrase, as if someone had breathed on it, that changes everything. It's no longer random. It directly implies a living presence. And just like that, boom, Thomas is not alone in that basement.
And then, just when you're processing that, the author twists something completely familiar, your own reflection, into something monstrous. This is such a great horror move because it messes with our sense of self. I mean, if you can't even trust your own face in the mirror, what can you trust? The threat isn't just some monster in the room anymore. It's now tied directly to Thomas himself.
So let's recap. We go from a wrong reflection to a warm mirror to this, a hidden chamber. Do you feel the speed here? The author is just piling these discoveries on top of each other. It's scratch, fog, black eyes, secret door, bam, bam, bam. This rapid-fire pace is totally intentional. It's designed to make you feel like you're being pulled forward, deeper and deeper into the horror, with absolutely no time to catch your breath.
So how does the author make the big reveal so terrifying? Well, a huge part of it comes down to simple vocabulary, the words they choose. We're going to look at 5 specific, really powerful words that this author uses to make the horror feel visceral, to make it feel real.
All right, so when Thomas finally lays eyes on the woman inside that hidden chamber, the author's word choices are picked to set off this chain reaction of just pure disgust. It starts with the overall impression. The image is intentionally gruesome. The goal here isn't just to scare you. It's to make you feel that revulsion deep in your gut, a powerful physical reaction. And that revulsion gets even stronger because the author is cashing in on an earlier promise. Remember that smell from the very beginning? Well, here's the payoff. The author uses the word rotten, and that connects the initial hint of decay directly to the creature. That something rotten he smelled, it wasn't just in the air, it was her. Then, the description shifts from just how she is to what was done to her with this verb, gouged. Her eyes aren't just missing or gone. No, gouged is a word of pure brutality. It implies a violent, terrible act, and it forces us, the readers, to imagine the awful cruelty that she must have suffered. And to really complete this absolutely horrifying picture, the author adds texture with the word shreds. This isn't just about decay anymore. It suggests the creature is actively, unnaturally falling apart. And comparing it to torn cloth, that makes her seem both fragile and deeply, deeply unnatural. It's an image that's really hard to shake. Finally, all of this horror culminates in one single word that describes Thomas's own end: agony. This is so much more than just pain. We're talking total, all-consuming physical and mental suffering. It's the ultimate emotional gut punch, and it leaves the reader with the full, unfiltered horror of what happened to him. So how do all of these elements, the atmosphere, the vocabulary, the reveals, how do they all come together in the climax? Well, the author doesn't just throw a bunch of chaos at the page. The final fight is actually carefully, deliberately structured to feel absolutely inescapable. Just check out the progression here. At first, the fight starts as a struggle that, he might actually win. He's fighting back. But the turning point, it's such a brilliant, cruel twist. His one act of pure desperation, smashing that mirror, is the very thing that seals his fate. The one thing he thinks is going to save him is what unleashes the full horror. It turns a one-on-one fight into a completely hopeless slaughter. And the resolution? It's just perfect horror. The police show up, and the evidence just doesn't add up. The mirror, the very source of the nightmare, is perfectly intact. And the bloodstains, they just stop in the middle of the floor. This completely reinforces the supernatural element. It tells us the rules of our world don't apply here, which makes the threat feel so much bigger. Thomas didn't just die. He was erased. And then you get this last chilling line. It introduces this idea of cyclical horror. See, Thomas wasn't the first victim, and this line makes it terrifyingly clear that he is not going to be the last. The horror isn't really over. It's just dormant. It's waiting.
And it leaves you, the reader, with this profound sense of unease because you realize the story never actually ends. So what does this all boil down to? Look, a haunted house and a monster in the basement, those are pretty simple ideas, right? But it's the craft, the careful choice of words, the foreshadowing, the use of sensory details, that super visceral vocabulary, that's what elevates a story from just a simple scare into a true nightmare, the kind that really gets under your skin. The real horror, you see, isn't just in what happens, it's all in how it's told.